Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We are coming to you live, Nick and Laurel, to talk about some middle of the night shenanigans. We had middle of the night shenanigans last night with Augusta Democrats voting on a new initiative in the supplemental budget. And I was just saying over in the office, I haven't done an April Fool's joke today because we all woke up to this news. And you would think that it is an April Fool's joke, but indeed it is not. And so here's the deal. The Appropriations Committee of the Legislature met last night at dark 30. And in the middle of the night, they voted pretty much on party lines to advance an increase to the income tax.
Yes.
Nick, why don't you explain exactly what it does?
Yes, they tacked on the income tax surcharge that has been bandied about in Augusta this session and previous sessions. It's a 2% surcharge on income earned over $1 million. So that's single filers earning $1 million, head of household, and married couples earning $1.5 million. So that's going to hit those top earners. But like we always say, I mean, these are the folks who provide the foundation for Maine's economy. They're the high-earning lawyers and doctors, and they're the business owners that really sustain the jobs here. And so, what do you do when you start pushing those folks out? You potentially push out their coworkers, their employees as well. So that's why we're watching this, and we were hoping it was an April Fool's joke, but it's very real.
Well, nobody's laughing about this in Augusta or here at Lead Maine headquarters because this is very real and very serious. And, I think we don't make $1 million. No. so we go.
Not quite there yet.
Okay, why should we care? Well, we should care because of the impact across the state of Maine, not just on those folks who are earning that, but then the effects on all Mainers as a result. And so, but first, I hear that this is a 2% fee, Nick.
A fee?
Is a fee a tax? I mean, that sounds like it's just a fee.
A
Don't
tax
worry
is a
about
fee
it.
for doing well.
And
a fee is a tax for doing wrong. So
okay.
they can call it whatever they want. It's
So
nickel and diming
fee,
people.
tax, it's the same thing, folks. Whether you call it by its name a tax or whether you try to camouflage it as a fee,
It's a tax by any other name.
is still a tax.
Still a tax.
Still a tax. So, all right. So last night, of course, this was done literally under the cover of darkness, you guys. Appropriations members were there into the wee hours of the morning. And this is what Augusta Democrats like to do. They want to do it under the cover of darkness so that it's harder for folks to watch. I mean, you're not up watching the Appropriations Committee at 2 o'clock in the morning, are you,
I forgot to put in testimony last night at 11:30.
Yeah.
I had my opportunity, but
Yeah. Maine people are not turning out to the State House in droves, at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm asleep, not paying attention to what the Appropriations Committee is doing. And I just hope it kind of skirts under and people just don't pay any attention to it the next day when you wake up. But we are paying attention, and this is a big hit. Potentially big hit to Maine's economy. Now, it's not all said and done. This is the first part of the process. So yes, Augusta Democrats have voted for this tax increase, but where do we go from here, Nick?
Well, the governor's got to sign it, right? So she put in this
And we gotta
supplemental
vote
budget.
on it.
That's right. You'll have to vote on it, of course.
I
So
wonder
there's
how
big
I should
questions
vote.
there. Yeah, well, I think we know how Laurel Libby's going to vote. I hope. I don't know. I think we do.
That's
though.
a hard no.
That's a hard no. Hard no on it. We were a hard no on the supplemental before all this crap. So it's been a mess since the beginning. The change package didn't make any better, and this stuff that this is stuff that legislative Democrats are tacking onto Governor Mills' supplemental, right? So she initially proposed this,
Yeah.
and now the left wing of her party, who runs the legislature, is tacking on additional tax increases for her.
So, and to be clear, that's the process here. So Governor Mills proposed a supplemental budget to spend the additional tax revenue that Mainers have paid into the state.
Right, it was almost $300 million.
Almost $300 million. And so that supplemental budget is being processed by the Appropriations Committee. They're voting on all the different elements that go into this document, this budget that's hundreds of pages long. And then last night, this was added in. So this additional tax was added into the budget. So that was what was going on at dark 30 is talk and voting about the budget. we are coming to the end of the legislative session. It's supposed to end on April 15th, and we have to have a balanced budget. And so these budget conversations are ongoing. They should be wrapping up this week. And in fact, today, the Appropriations Committee was back in. So there may be more shockwaves coming. We hear that there's more new things that are going to be going into the budget. Who knows what those are? But we're going to stay on topic, stay on task here with this 2% fee, 2% tax, because there's more that goes into this. So let's talk about how many individuals this directly impacts as far as, that actual taxation, first of all.
Sure. So at Maine Revenue Service, they come out when these sorts of bills come out, and they have this whole distribution schedule, this table, and they show all the different taxpayers, the percentage of liability that each of those taxpayers are going to be responsible for in here. They break it down by income. And so this comes out to really only about 1,800 filers in Maine, so that's couples or people filing individually, but those are the people who this is ultimately going to affect. It's about 1,800 people, and it ultimately really only brings in $75 million each year per year. So we calculated that to be about 1.2% of the total budget. So what we're doing is inflicting this extra surtax on the folks who, one, can afford to move if they want to, right? They can afford to leave.
And are already paying,
they're already paying it,
huge.
Exactly.
So these are individuals who are already paying, what, 18%?
18%.
They're paying 18% of our total income tax.
They're responsible for 18%
comes into the state. They are currently responsible. This small pool of individuals is currently responsible for that 18% of the income tax, the personal income tax.
This would push that up to about 20%, so that cohort of 1,800 of the highest earners, the state's highest earners, they'd be up to about 20%, so that be one of every $5 the state takes in an income tax would be directly falling on this group, this 1,800 taxpayers that the legislative Democrats are targeting now. There's no guarantee that all of those folks are going to be there paying the same amount that they did, that they don't have some accountant or a lawyer that they know that can maybe shield their tax obligations for some. These are the sorts of things that get those people working on stuff like that so they don't pay that sort of tax.
And moving, or not coming to Maine in the first place. Like, let's talk about that scenario. We here, it's going to sound like we're pivoting, but we're really not. Our medical system is completely falling apart, right? Healthcare is a disaster in Maine right now. We do not have particularly enough specialists, right? We do not have enough physicians with expertise in a particular area. If you need a specialty, there is a waiting list, and it is a long waiting list. You could be waiting months and months and months, if not years, frankly. And I know a number of individuals who have given up and either gone to Boston or elsewhere, or Florida. I was talking to somebody else who says they go to Florida for all of their medical care as a Maine resident, because they can get it quicker and they can get in to see specialists, and it's a lower cost. So hey, you get a trip to Florida out of it, and you get to see a physician in a timely manner. So we have such an incredible shortage of these individuals. Listen, if you are getting recruited to move to Maine, and you know that your income tax is going to be 9+% with this additional 2%, and you know that your New Hampshire income tax is going to be zero,
no matter how much you make.
No matter how much you make, where are you going to move to as a specialist? You're going to move to New Hampshire, right?
Because they have the same needs too, or they have similar needs as we do, but we're not helping ourselves.
But we're not helping ourselves. And so as you think about what businesses will not come to Maine, what workers will not come to Maine, we are just punishing ourselves by putting into place a tax like this.
And why? Because Democrats want to spend 1.2% more.
Yeah,
they can't get
1.2%. So that's 145 million over 2 years, right? Or 140 million.
About 140, 150.
About.
Yep.
Okay, that's in the context of $12 billion, like you said, 1.2%. And reminder, folks, this budget over the last 7 years has gone up from $7 billion to $12 billion. And so we're in this place where we are because the Democrats have such an insatiable appetite for more of your money so that they can spend more dollars. And they just want more of your money. And so this gets instituted. What happens when those folks move, Nick?
Well, I mean, it means
they just stop collecting that money,
and
they say, "Oh, good, we just won't get that money anymore."
Yeah, however much that they were getting from this tax filer is gone, and that's now revenue that they were counting on because they score these things in this static way that we can pin these 1,800 people down and squeeze a little bit more out of them. we get a little bit more money out of it. They don't dynamically score it where they say, does this affect somebody's ability to stay here or their ability to move? Does this potentially push them away? Does it affect their business? We don't talk about those sorts of things. They assume they can tax these people and they're not going to go anywhere.
So when a fraction of those folks leave, does the state just say, oh, well, I guess we won't collect that money?
Well, no, they're still going to need it because they're spending it, right? So
Right.
you gotta get the money somehow. So
Right.
of course they have to expand that bracket and maybe expand the limit to touch more of the middle income filers. I mean, I was reading that this is chained CPI, so it could potentially drag that drag that bracket into the middle income because it's not going to move as quickly as a regular CPI. So it just means that that could potentially happen sooner. The fact that this tax will need to expand to the middle income. It happens everywhere. It happens all these places that are looking at these millionaire taxes.
So these
Inevitably has
millionaire
to hit middle
taxes
class.
get put into place, the millionaires move, and then you and I end
Or
up
left.
paying
Right.
for the paying the taxation that the millionaires are no longer here to pay.
Right.
Because you gotta fund the what?
Well, and that's a great question because last night, of course, this tax surcharge idea was a bill that was going to do the 2% on $1 million
It
income.
was a standalone bill. It had
It's a standalone
public
bill.
hearing and
Exactly.
taxation committee and
Exactly. It was
all of
something
that.
we've been messaging on for a while, talking about trying to raise awareness that Democrats are trying to push a new tax.
Yes.
And lo and behold, they move it into the supplemental, but one of the pieces of that LD 1089 was that all of this money was going to go to K through 12 education.
Oh, education.
And I mean, hey, who could debate the value of putting more money into education? I guess when you look at our
I could.
results, then
You could.
maybe we could, but usually that's something that is taken as a
Yeah.
good thing from everyone.
And it's a political ploy in this case, right? It was like, we've got to tax more so we can put more into education, and who's going to poo-poo that?
Commercialize it.
We
right.
we need the money for education. Now, we'll leave the Maine's abysmal test scores aside and how our education system is currently failing our students. That's an issue for another day. But what they did last night was they stripped that right out of there. And so this new tax isn't even going to virtue signaling go to education. It's just going to go into the general fund to pay for whatever. So this is like a slush fund
crazy.
for whatever pet project the Democrats want to pay
Yeah,
for.
and when you consider it's 1.2%, it's couch change, it's couch cushion change to just feed into the machine, and so you're going to go and affect the lives of thousands of Mainers who are building businesses and who are building a foundation for the future of this state and creating jobs. You're going to go hit those people. It's actually going to hurt each of those people, but what it's going to do to state government is gravy. It's nothing. It's 150 million more for them to throw into everything else for the next few years.
Absolutely. I'm thinking back to earlier last week. Time all blurs when you're up in Augusta, but at some point in the last week or so, we had a bill come before us that would increase or implement a tax benefit for the film industry. And I heard Democrats say on the floor over and over again, heard them say, when you lower taxes, then you can, it benefits the economy because you get more activity. So if we lowered taxes for this specific industry, the film industry, then the film industry would boom and we would have more money into the economy. And I'm just curious where all those Democrats have gone that were saying this, that when you lower taxes, you stimulate the economy.
Wow, it sounds like they almost had it. It sounds like they were so close to getting it for one day, but alas.
Yeah. Oh,
Wow.
that's gone.
It's amazing.
So there is some political dynamic here as well, because of course this is not a new concept to Augusta Democrats. They have been trying to pass this for a long time. And in fact, my second term, this bill, a similar bill, did pass.
Yes.
And it sat on the governor's desk for a while. In fact, some of us thought, timing-wise, we were like past the time she could veto it. And lo and behold, at the last second, Governor Mills vetoed the millionaire's tax.
This same proposal.
This same proposal,
that they tacked onto her supplemental.
That they tacked onto her supplemental.
So they're saying, here, go ahead, do it again.
Try it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
See what happens.
I think that shows the rift between Mills and her sort of liberal wing, the liberal wing of the legislative Democrats, that is controlling Augusta. So you see
and
that
now she's running against Graham Planner.
it's all out in the open now. All the dirty laundry's out there. No
we-
one's holding back anymore.
No, and like, how can you out extreme each other? Well, a millionaire's tax. Everybody on that side of the aisle wants a millionaire's tax. And it will be interesting to see if this does hit the governor's desk, if Augusta Democrats get a smackdown,
Right.
and this doesn't stay in the budget, like what is going to happen to this piece of it?
Could absolutely see some
'Cause
backroom.
there's a lot of politics going on
Yes, I could see some backroom whipping posts happening there where they say, okay, uncle, we'll take it out,
Yeah.
but I think she's the end of her term. She's in a contentious primary. The progressives in the caucus are going to say, okay, how much do you care about our ideas, and how much do you care about the progressive cause? Here's your
And
opportunity.
how much do you care about winning your primary?
That's it. So she's between a rock and a hard place. But if you're Janet Mills and your political career rests on this primary and catering to the left-wing base of your party, how do you not sign it? Which is
100%.
scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then that means she's a 180 from the last several sessions. I mean, literally this
Absolutely.
session.
Yeah.
Mike Allen, the associate tax commissioner, testified against this.
Against this bill, and that's testifying for the administration,
Right,
to be
right.
clear. And so I remember part of her veto letter, when the governor vetoes a bill, she issues a veto letter, and part of the veto letter talked about how unstable this income is, right?
Right.
Besides the fact that you have folks who can leave, this is also based on a less stable form of income.
Yes.
This could be variable income, it could be more volatile. And so if you start to count on this millionaire's tax as a portion of the budget, you could be out that funding. And that's part of the basis for her veto. Frankly, it should be vetoed if it hits the governor's desk, simply because we don't need to take more taxes. We need to just cut how much we are spending.
Absolutely.
But that's not a reason that the governor would veto it.
Probably not. I'm curious because the governor of Maine does have line item veto power. I'm wondering if she would be considering maybe striking that provision of it, signing it anyway. Because she already gamed out all of the money, right? All of the surplus that was there for the supplemental, they go and they spend it all. With the change package, they saw they were getting a little bit more. Okay, they went and spend it all. So I think this is part of
Yeah.
Mills' grand strategy that she's done every session, is to limit the amount of funds that are available for the special appropriations table, everybody else's bills, so that she gets everything she wants in her budget, doesn't have to really cater to
Well,
others.
does she get everything she wants in her budget? Because there are some other changes. We're going to have to talk about this at a different time.
Sure,
There are some
sure.
other changes, like those $300 checks that Governor Mills had initially put into her budget. Those have been changed. There's not nearly as much money being taken out of the rainy day fund for those $300 checks, and only some people will be getting those checks. So whose votes are being bought at this point? Not quite sure. We'll have to see what the appropriations votes look like.
Yeah. Sounds like she needs to buy some legislative Democrats' votes.
Sounds like Governor Mills definitely has some work to do within the Democrat caucus to get folks on her page, because they seem to not be at the moment. There's a lot of contentious kind of back and forth and going on behind the scenes, I think.
We'll see how much of it comes out into the open.
Yeah, bottom line, there is no tax increase needed in the state of Maine. We need to cut spending, we need to cut taxes, and Mainers need more of their own money in their pockets. That is what will encourage the economy. That's what will encourage folks to bring their businesses here. That's what they will encourage the high-earning individuals to come here and
Exactly.
bring their professions with them.
Exactly.
And this is a bad move for Maine. It's a bad move for Mainers, and it's going to be a hit to our economy. Any final words, Nick?
I mean, geez, we're the 5th highest tax state in the country. This will probably bump us up to the top 3. So, how far can you
Yes.
go? How far can you go before you kill the golden goose?
How far can you go? And does anybody else want Nick to answer that question next? Where does this exactly put us? If this passes, we'll give you guys the answer at some point here. Where does that put us in the rankings? Can we catch up with New York and California?
We're racing for it.
Like,
We're racing.
are we?
We
If
may.
Augusta Democrats have their way, we will be number 1.
Yeah, we're gonna
in the
get there pretty soon.
nation.
It sounds like. I mean, how do they stop? If that's how you show your progressive bona fides, how do you slow down? What's the limiter there?
Why limit
I don't know.
it? I think that's their.
What's the
their
limiter? Is the
mantra.
voters, right? The voters are the limiter.
The voters are the
It's
limiter.
us that have to stand up.
And this year is an election year. It's 2026. The entire legislature is up for a vote. If you have not signed up for our updates at leadmaine.com, do so that we can keep you in the loop about how we take our state back and stop these progressive radicals from advancing their will on our state, but put common sense policies back in place once more again.
That's right. That's right.
All right, sign up at leadmaine.com. Thanks for tuning in today, and we will be back again with more.